Welcome to this very special Memorial Day weekend edition of the New Hampshire Journal Podcast. Normally we have some brilliant intellectual person with deep insights and political experience and vast knowledge to dip from, but alas, not this week. We're stuck with J. Mark Powell, who may or may not have been my roommate in college and I may have not have known for years. And Powell, if you tell them how many years, I'm going to pull the plug on this podcast immediately. You will not sell a single book.
That is not necessarily a deal breaker.
I'm sorry to hear that because I'm really trying to keep it secret. Yes,
it is a pleasure. It is a pleasure to be with you today.
So you've seen Holy Cow History at New Hampshire Journal and Inside Sources, and you've seen the great stuff, and you've seen me touting like crazy the book Witness to War, which I have right here. I keep it on my little bookshelf thingy so people can see it because I have in fact read it, and I have little page markings, and it's a terrific book, and we're going to talk about it in a second. It also gives me a chance to point to my other cool stuff behind me, like my Lincoln head that my dad carved, and the Maestro license plate I got from Governor John H. Sununu, back when we had good Sununus in New Hampshire, Powell. The second generation, I got to tell you, real downgrade. You know what I mean? It's like the classic Warner Brothers versus the 1960 Warner Brothers cartoons. You know, you can just see the downgrade. It's just true. But hey, listen, before we talk about your terrific book, Witness to War, you've been involved in Republican politics since you were like, what, a larva? Do I have that about right?
In utero, yes.
You were the Midwest chairman of the College Republicans back in the Reagan era.
Federation. Yeah, back in the very end of the Carter, administration.
And you had an encounter with the great man?
Carter or Reagan?
Excuse me. You have to ask, which of the two is the great man?
Okay.
Did I say the redneck bozo from Georgia? No, I did not.
Okay. I met Reagan on several occasions, but my famous brush with Reagan, the College Republican National Committee and the Young Republican Committee had a joint meeting in Washington in March 1981, ironically at the Washington Hilton. And it wrapped up and we were staying there. And as you know, we went to college in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And my flight out of a national airport in Washington wasn't until like 5 o'clock or so. So we had time. We checked out that morning, and a friend of mine said, "Hey, you know, Reagan's going to be here at the Hilton this afternoon. You want to watch him when he comes in?" And I said, "Yeah, heck, we don't have anything better to do." And it is quite a sight. Of course, in New Hampshire, a lot of people have seen it. A presidential motorcade is quite a dog and pony show, just watching the whole entourage. Right. And so Reagan gets out and, and the whole bit. And I was really we were across the street, but I was really surprised at the time. I remember thinking how surprised I was at how close spectators could get to him. Right.
Sure.
So he goes in, and once it's all done, a friend turns to me, and if I live to be 100, I'll never forget this. He said, "Do you want to wait and watch him when he comes out?" And I said, quote, "No, we've seen all there is to see. We need to get going here." He goes, "Yeah, you're right. Okay." And of course, Reagan is shot when he comes out, so I missed American history by about an hour. That was my
classic news.
Had I been there, someone would have like bumped Hinckley's elbow or something, and I would have taken a bullet. There would be the J. Mark Powell stamp and quarter. So I missed my chance at greatness.
Your news judgment remains just as solid today as it was back then. Hey, and now that we're at war with Iran, didn't you almost get trampled to death in Iranian protest or something?
I had an internship for the Republican National Committee in 1980. I was 19. It was the summer between my freshman and sophomore years of college, and it was absolutely wonderful because it was basically just stay out of your way and don't get into trouble, and you can do whatever you want internship. And for a kid from, Wanker County in the back 40, here I was suddenly in Washington, and I was seeing all these famous people in the news, and I just absorbed it like a sponge. And ironically, one of my best boyhood friends who just passed away recently, his mother's cousin was our congressman from back home. Oh. And so he got a job parking cars in the Capitol garage that summer. I got an internship. So we're roommates. Okay. Well, you remember 1979 throughout 80 was the Iranian hostage crisis. And so on a Sunday in early August, right as we were about to leave and return home, there was going to be a big protest rally in downtown DC. And Chris says, come on. What are we going to do? We're going to go home. We haven't even seen one protest. And I did not want to go, but I thought, Chris is going to get in trouble. Let's go and watch out for Chris, right? So we get there, and I don't know what it was, but it was massive. large turn, thousands. Well, there were thousands on both sides, and the Shah had died that morning. So emotions,
Right.
and Iranians are such calm, cool, collected people to begin with, right? Well, they were revved up into overdrive on both sides, right? And they're shouting and they're screaming. And I mean, it was the first time I think I'd ever seen raw hatred, raw sheer hatred in people's faces, and the police are linking arms to keep these groups. And Chris and I there's pushing and shoving, and Chris and I get separated, right? And someone shoves something into my hand, and I'm holding it without realizing it. It was the old Iranian, it was a paper on a little wooden stick, the old Iranian flag with the Shah's crest, the imperial Iranian flag. So I'm now identifying with one faction, trying to figure out what it is. And somebody throws rocks and they begin surging, and it's a riot. Okay. And Chris and I are separated. And I honestly believed I was picked up and moved by the crowd without walking. I really do. It was terrifying. I saw a rock just split open the side of a girl's college young woman's head.
Right.
And she fell to the ground. And I remember a young Iranian man cradling her and screaming, looking, goes, "Is this the justice of America? Is this the justice of America?" Meanwhile, Chris, the one who had wanted to be there, is safe and taking pictures and having a blast. And I finally, the police are herding people towards the line of cops to arrest them, right? So I'm running towards these police holding this little Iranian flag. And there's no time. All I can think of, I'm running towards this 19-year-old kid screaming, "American, American, American." And they kind of part and let me pass.
Right.
I don't get rounded up and taken to the cooler.
Sure, exactly.
And finally, after a couple hours of searching, I run into Chris, and he looks at me and his face just goes white, because apparently mine, and he said, "What's going to happen?" I said, "I don't want to talk. I just want to go home. And when we get home, I'm going to kill you." that was my I survived a teenage Iranian riot story.
And here we are back with the riots again. And here we are back with
Iran
America.
Is still,
exactly. And here we are back with America.
Now I'm a senior citizen, and Iran is still going on.
And here we are back contemplating possible significant military action again. And you have this new book out called Witness to War about the Civil War. Tell everybody what makes your book different.
Well, it's different for several reasons. First of all, it's not a true history book, in the sense that it's not just names and dates and facts and boring stuff. I call it a history book for people who don't like history. For people who don't like to read history, because I've had dozens of people have been messaging me and telling me, it's like, "Hey, I don't like history, but boy, I like reading that." Also, it's not my interpretation of history. This book is entirely based on excerpts from the 328 different people from over 500 letters. It's their own words, unbiased, unfiltered. Just throw it all out and you read it, make up your own mind, all possible perspectives in their own words, written in real time as it was happening. No memoirs, no recollections decades later, in the moment. Also, no famous names. And I did that intentionally. There are no presidents, no famous generals here. Right. These are everyday people, because my goal, I've been a lifelong Civil War nut, literally since age 8, 9. And I wanted to know, what was it like? What was it like to be there? To live this experience. We can't sit down and ask anyone today, what was the Civil War really like? Right. But they can tell us in their own words, in an immediacy, in the moment as it's happening. So that's what makes this book different.
Okay, so now I'm going to actually explain what makes the books different, since the author was unable to do that for our viewers. What makes the difference is it is nothing but the story of the Civil War in letters written on the spot, from the beginning, before Fort Sumter, all the way through after Appomattox. And what jumped out at me when I read it, the way I've been telling people is, if the Civil War had Twitter, it would have been something like this, because stuff is happening. And you're going to read an excerpt from New Hampshire letter for us in just a moment, right? Stuff was happening. So like one of my favorites is out in Kansas and Missouri. You had these states that were divided. They weren't sure where we were going to go where. And so you had secession units over here and Union units over here. And people are like, I wonder who's going to get to the stockade first. Who's going to get to the arms? They didn't know. And so just like Twitter, you see something on the news and you go, oh, I bet, whatever, so-and-so. And then, 32 minutes later, oh, that was totally wrong. Well, you don't know. And I don't want to ask somebody, Powell, what was it like to live through the Civil War? Because they're going to tell us from knowing how it ended what it was like. So that's not what it was like because you didn't know. What makes your book so readable, and I just love it, and it's a great read too, because it's a series of letters with you explaining who they are and the context. You can read 5 pages at a time. You can read 100 pages at a time. It still works. It's a realization, just like we're going through right now with Iran. Nobody knows what's going to happen with Iran. And I will tell you, 10 years from now, people are going to remember how it was based on the outcome. If the Iranian regime collapses, Trump's going to be a genius and a hero and look at this great thing. And if America leaves with its tail between its legs and there's a toll booth in the streets for Hormuz, people are going to go, what an idiot that guy was. We won't know until it's done. So that's why it's such a fun book for me.
And that's the problem with history. We read history knowing how the story ends.
Exactly.
They don't. And this starts with Lincoln's election, and we watch the country fall apart. And you mentioned Twitter. One reader messaged me and said, it's like watching the country fall apart in 1861, literally come apart at the seams, right, is like reading social media today. And that's disturbing comparison. But they don't know. And you follow the whole arc and sweep of the war in real time. It starts off with this burst of patriotic enthusiasm, da-da-da-da-da. And then finally, in early 1862, with the Battle of Shiloh, the first truly major battle, they all kind of go, oh my God, what have we done? What have we got ourselves into, right? And then in 1863, 64, they're just sick of it. Everybody's sick of it. One soldier in the book writes, he says, I want this war to be over, and I don't care much how it terminates.
Right.
Just let me go home and let this.
There's something magic.
At the end, and they don't know how to get out of it, so they've just got to see it through.
There's something magic in the annals of war about over by Christmas. That was the Civil War was going to be over by Christmas, or whatever. And World War I was going to be over by. Everybody just thinks that we're going to have this war, we're just going to win it, and then go home.
Well, but in fairness to them, remember, in the Napoleonic era, right before them, about 50 years before, that's how it happened. You built a massed army. Your enemies built a massed army. You have one big battle, and it decides it, and they all go home. Somebody wins, somebody loses, and that's who wins the war. Right? In broadly speaking, and that's what they thought was going to happen here, and it didn't. Part of the problem was it was just too dang big. This war covered 1/3 of the North American continent, from Pennsylvania to modern New Mexico. And there were 2.2 million men totally involved. It was massive. And Europe was watching this very closely. I mean, not just the governments, but the people. Right. Europe, which was no stranger to large-scale bloodshed, Europe was horrified. The London Times wrote during the war, the Americans are making war on one another like no one else ever has in history before. They were appalled by the bloodshed here. And if I may, can I just give you real quick? I don't like numbers and stats, so but you got to have some sometimes to put this in context. We're talking strictly New Hampshire, what I'm about to share with you, to give you an idea.
I was about to ask you, what role did New Hampshire play? Before you get into numbers, I just want to point something out which is fascinating. New Hampshire has some legendary generals. Of course, we got the phrase "live free or die" from General Stark. And yet, whether it's the Revolutionary War, which New Hampshire played a key role in, or it's the Civil War, where New Hampshire Regiment played a key role, New Hampshire's smart. We don't do a lot of fighting here. Like we'll go fight in Massachusetts. Let them clean up the mess. We'll go down south. But look, seriously, like they're doing you've got the 250th anniversary of the Revolutionary War. There's not a lot of stuff that happened in New Hampshire. New Hampshire played a key role with its people, but not with its geography. We got the Pine Tree Riot, and then that fight over the fort. I forget the name of it, St. Mary, whatever, Mary and William and Mary. And then that's about it.
Yeah, always have the fight on your enemy's turf. Not
exactly.
But I just want to give you some stats real quick, because this will crystallize why this experience was. This will put it in context of why this was horrific. Okay, in New Hampshire alone, the 1860 census found that of military men, because remember, women didn't serve at this time, so it's men only, between military age 18 to 45, there were 64,000 males in that age group. 32,500 of them served in the Civil War.
Wow.
That's half. Okay. Wow. Now stop and think for a minute. Think of
Yep.
half the men from college age to
Exactly.
middle age that you know in your life around you are suddenly gone. That's going to critically impact the workforce.
Sure.
Those families, there's no social safety net in place
Exactly.
to help these families, right? And women only have so many job
Mm.
opportunities. I mean, this is a pretty darn big deal. Okay, so you got 32,500, right? Of those, almost 5,000 die, killed in battle,
Mm.
later die of injuries, die of disease, die of infections, killed in accidents, right? That is almost 50, that's a fatality rate of almost 15.3%. Think of the
Mm.
recent wars in our lifetime. Can you imagine if we had a 15.3% casualty rate, what the country would do? Right?
No.
And we're just talking fatalities. We're
Right.
not talking the tens of thousands of more who are maimed
Exactly.
and crippled and left disabled for
Mm.
life, have lifetime injuries, you know?
Right.
And it ripples on beyond that. Okay. So basically, just under 8% of the entire male population in that age group in New Hampshire alone was killed, died.
Mm.
That's why we have Memorial Day. That's why we need to remember. Okay. And okay, so we're talking about 5,000 people. Each one was a person, each was a statistic,
Right.
each was a life. Somebody loved them, some people
Mm.
hated them. They had hopes, they had dreams, they had loves, they had hates, they had
Right.
fears, they had patriotism, they had everything, but they were real big
Mm.
people. Joseph Stalin, a man not famous for his humanity,
Right.
once said something profound. He said, when one person dies, it's a tragedy. When a million people die, it's a statistic.
Right.
And we talk about 5,000. We go to these lovely national cemeteries that are
Mm.
beautifully maintained. And we see all these neat, lovely little marble white
Sure.
headstones laid out, right? Each one is a life underneath that. And
Mm.
Witness to War resurrects those lives briefly for a few moments
Mm.
and remembers and puts flesh and blood on these people
Right.
over a century and a half later. So that's what it's all about.
So, as a Civil War historian, what role did New Hampshire's military efforts play in the war, and what was the key What was the most important or most significant battle for a New Hampshire unit?
I don't know if I'd say one. They were certainly
Right.
you'd have to say Gettysburg was the most decisive one, and they were there, but they were all up and down the eastern seaboard. They were there from the beginning.
What did New
From
Hampshire troops do at Gettysburg?
survived one.
Well, no, it's like,
Well, I've got to research because when you say New Hampshire troops, they were spread out. And they
right.
weren't all. There wasn't just one block of New
Okay,
Hampshire
got it.
troops.
Mm.
They were scheduled. That's why I can't give a specific answer like that. But they were involved in very heavy duty fighting the whole time. But they were involved in the whole thing from the beginning to the end, from first Manassas or first Bull Run in Virginia
Mm.
in July 1861, the first true battle. There had been some small battles and
Sure.
oversized skirmishes, but until Appomattox, they were there every step of the way, and they've been there ever since. And every war America's fought, Granite State soldiers have been there. But I did want to share a couple of things. I got four very short excerpts. I want to say, when you hear the word letters,
Right.
we do not print the entire letter. Okay.
Mm.
I have read between 25 and 30,000 original Civil War era letters in my
Wow.
time. And look, if I were to write a letter to you, or you write a letter, hey
Mm.
Powell, how's the crops? How's Ma? How's the
Right.
pigs? And then there's a paragraph or two that are really good. We had a battle, da da
Right.
da. I saw General Grant today. I saw General Sherman. I saw President
Mm.
Lincoln, da 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 da. And then Bill has the dysentery, and boy, it'd be good. So what I do is take the quote, the soundbite, the memorable moment from that letter,
Right.
and script away the rest of it. And that's what keeps it. You just read. You don't have to wade through.
Mm.
I just want the viewers to realize when you read this, that's what keeps it moving fast. We're
Right.
just the facts, man, just the facts, and we don't get bogged down in all that other stuff.
So, who's your
So
first
yeah,
letter from?
today,
Yes.
I'm
Who's
gonna read,
our
yes,
first New Hampshire letter from?
from a woman named Dahlia. I don't have a last name. And again, that's the problem. Some of these people, if I were to write to you, I'd write sincerely Powell instead of J. Mark Powell,
Exactly.
right? So sometimes we don't. Most of them are identified. And I tried, and by the way, and that's another thing, I try to give a little capsule bio of just who they were.
Sure.
So you have some context of who this writer is. And sometimes I'll have to say, so and so who's writing this letter was killed 90 days later in battle, or
Right.
wound up being a prisoner of war and died in Andersonville.
Mm.
And lots of readers have said, wow, that makes that more impactful and profound when I'm
Sure.
reading their words, because I know what's coming for this guy and he doesn't, right?
Right.
So Dahlia writes, this gives you a sense of, she's writing in Dover, New Hampshire, on April 27th, 1861. This is right. I mean, Fort Sumter was surrendered on April 14th. So she's writing 13 days
Right.
after. So this is right at the white hot peak of war fever. She's writing to a girlfriend of hers in Massachusetts. And she said, "Oh, is it not dreadful, Allie, to have our country in such a confusion? Here in Dover, there is very great excitement. Most all of the ladies and gentlemen wear the red, white, and blue badge. I have a very pretty one. Flags are upon every pole, hung from people's windows and festooned over their doors. We have to have our flag on our newspaper daily also. There is a company to leave Dover on Monday, and another company is about ready to go. The ladies have been at work the past week, fitting the soldiers out with uniforms. Tomorrow morning, they are each to be given a New Testament." So the community is just rah,
Right.
rah, 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 rah. We're all, so that's in the moment, what it was like, you know?
Sure.
Pardon me. By the way, there's another letter from Connecticut at the same time. The very first troop trains are coming. And it's literally about this time, late April.
Sure.
And the writer said they at first were trying to move the troop trains at night so they didn't interrupt the daily passenger and freight train schedules. And the writer says, we got up at midnight and went to the depot, and the train was 2 hours late, and people would get up and cheer, and right. And that's true. And it was just throngs of people, they said.
Right.
Yeah, within 4 to 6 weeks, they'd still cheer when they saw troop trains, but they wouldn't get up in the middle of the night for them.
Exactly.
By 90 days, troop trains were the new normal, and they didn't even care. They didn't even notice. It's just,
you got another letter for us?
Yes, we do. Pardon me. Fort Wagner. Charles A. Lawrence, a second lieutenant in the 7th New Hampshire Infantry. Do you remember the movie Glory with Denzel Washington and Matthew Broderick? The Federals were on Morris Island, which is in the entrance to Charleston Harbor. And that was very important because that was a blockade runner. And of course, Charleston has the significance to the Federals because that was where the Ordinance of Secession was passed, and South Carolina became the first state to secede in Charleston in December 1860. And then the war starts at Fort Sumter the following April. So
it also inspired one of the greatest political quotes of all time: South Carolina, too small for a republic, too large for an insane asylum. And that was spoken by one of my fellow South Carolinians.
They've really got it out for they really it's symbolic, but it's strategically important too. So they're on Morris Island, and Fort Wagner is at the tip of it. And if you saw that movie, there's a night attack that was led by the 54th Massachusetts, which was called the U.S. Colored Troops at that time.
Right.
They were African Americans, blacks, and there was much more in it than that. There were thousands of guys involved in it, and it was a horrible slaughter. So this Lieutenant Tucker, Gilbert Tucker, first lieutenant in the 10th New. I got myself wrong. Charles Lawrence, second Lieutenant Lawrence. He's in that attack, and he's writing to his wife, and he's wounded afterwards. And hang on here. Morris Island, South Carolina, July 25th, 1863. No person who has not been in a battle can have any good idea of the scene that is presented or the sensations felt by the actors in the tragedy or of the horrid reality of it. The Charleston Mercury newspaper says the dead of our forces lay in the ditch or trenches, lay in the ditch like sardines in a box. They buried some 600 of our men the next day. When I left the field of slaughter, I could not help noticing many of the dead. Some lay straight as could be, while others were drawn up in a heap with their head down to their knees. But the worst were the wounded. The poor creatures were trying to get out of the way of the shot and shells that was continually poured upon us. I saw one poor fellow that was laying in the water of the sea, and the tide was rising fast, and he could not get up, and said that was the best place to lay to be out of the way. I hope I never again see such a sight. Colonel Haldeman Putman was instantly killed, the back part of his head being blown off. He was last seen on top of the enemy's works, calling his men to come on. My company has 17 on the sick list today, besides those that are recovering in the hospitals from injuries, and only 13 left for duty.
Wow.
So it was horrible. And another thing, too, you and I have never been in actual combat. The majority of modern Americans today have not ever been in combat. But we've all seen war movies on TV. We've all seen TV programs that show combat.
Sure.
So we have at least an expectation of the
Right.
sense of shells exploding and gunfire and the
Right.
loud and the seeing the fireballs and explosions. We at least would have an expectation. They don't
Right.
in the 1860s. They don't have movies. All they've
Right.
seen are paintings and prints and drawings.
Right.
This is a whole new, and to them, it's mind. It's overwhelming, it's sensationalized. Next, we go to this is one more. We've got four. Next, we go to Gilbert Tucker, a first lieutenant in the 10th New Hampshire. He was among the very first Union troops to enter Richmond when Richmond fell, the
Okay.
Confederate capital, Richmond, Virginia.
Right.
Now, there's great confusion and great argument and debate over who came in, because the New Hampshire troops are coming in, but they were called the USCT, the U.S. Colored Troops, the African American soldiers. There's several regiments of them coming in. They're all coming in from different roads at the same time.
Right.
So who was first? God only knows. He was among the actual first. Whether he was the first or not, heaven only knows. But this is what he writes. Richmond, Virginia, and Granite Staters were there. Richmond, Virginia, April 6th, 1865. We can say that the 10th Regiment was the first men in Richmond, and then the Negroes, for they didn't have to go so far. We started out on the morning of April 3rd and came as fast as we could walk. The men were very tired and couldn't have come so fast only for the excitement. We never stopped after we started, and the men with their knapsacks on their backs and all, those knapsacks 30 to 50 pounds carrying. So
Sure.
you're moving fast carrying 50
Right.
pounds on your back, not to mention your gun and all your other stuff strapped to you,
Right.
your cartridge box, your canteen, your haversack, your cap pouch, the city was on fire and it was near done in by the rebels. They blowed up the gunboats and destroyed everything they could before they left. The fire made horrid work, but as soon as we could, the fire engines was at work putting out the fire and made out to stop it. And he goes on to mention he saw Lincoln the next day when Lincoln visited Richmond. The very last letter is not from New
Wait,
Hampshire.
before you read that letter, tell us about your first letter ever. How did you start collecting these letters? How old were you? What was the circumstance?
Well, first of all, I fell in love with the Civil War at age 9. That was just my life's passion. And, militantly, bizarrely, when I was in junior high, our school library had a subscription to Civil War Times Illustrated magazine, a monthly magazine since ceased publication. I volunteered to work in the library before school restocking books. And Mrs. Hale, the librarian, the deal we cut was she would hold the new copy for me to read first before other kids could read it. Anyone else could read it. So I was willing to put in extra work to read the Civil War. That's how.
So the other boys were trying to get their hands on Dad's Playboy, and you were trying to get your hands
I'm
on.
trying to read Civil War Times, not the centerfold. And my poor parents would shake their heads and look at one another like, did we bring the wrong baby home from the hospital? Normal kids aren't like this. I got into civil war reenacting at age 15, with the uniforms and the guns, because I wanted to know what the experience was like firsthand. And I also knew from almost literally the moment I could write that I was a writer. I just boom. Remember when the teacher would say, "Oh, we got to write a book report, or we got to write a report on a state or something," and the whole class would groan. Secretly, I was like, "Yes," because it was a chance I could write, right? Which is no surprise with my love of the broad social studies and writing that I wound up in journalism.
Right.
I'm the past president of the National Association of People Stupid Enough to Make Journalism their career. That having been said, though, but I knew I was a writer. I knew I was in love with the Civil War. Right. And one day in 5th grade, if I lived to be 100, and I'm 2/3 of the way there, almost, I always remember a guy brought in his great great grandfather's letter, and I'm holding this letter in my hand.
Right.
And even at age 11, 12, I realized this letter is a literal time machine.
Exactly.
It was in a Civil War camp at that point, 110 years ago. And it's in my classroom in my hands right now in the early 1970s. It was there then, it's there now, but I connected through people with their words early on, being a writer, right? The first letter I got, ironically, was in Charleston. I was on my first honeymoon, and it was at a shop. It was for the outrageous price of like $35 or something,
right?
U5. And I slowly began acquiring them. I'm not a Nepo trust fund baby. Whenever, as you can attest, you've seen my paychecks. But whenever I could get one, and remember, pre-internet, all you had were either established dealers or Civil War shows,
Right.
trade shows where people would, you've seen them from
Mm-hmm.
time to time around the country.
Sure.
They'll have big expo centers and a weekend kind of thing. And so I would pick them up here and there. Then the internet comes along and changes everything, right? Now, okay, the dealers, the professional dealers,
Right.
they're not going to mess with letters that cost 25, 30, 40, $50. They're going to sell you
Exactly.
a letter from Grant or Robert E. Lee or Sherman or
Sure.
Stonewall Jackson that they can get $5,000,
Right.
$10,000 for,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
So naturally, they do they do the big inventory stuff that makes them a profit move. So there wasn't a whole lot of the very people I was looking for, the everyday men and women on the
Right.
battlefront, the fronts, the home front, on the sidelines. That whole crowd was missing, right? Well, along comes eBay and everything changes. Suddenly, there was a way to move this material that the
Mm-hmm.
big established dealers didn't want.
Exactly.
And suddenly, as I mentioned in the book, suddenly all this material that had sat untouched and unopened and unread in great Aunt Selma's
Right.
dresser drawer for 75 years was seeing the light of day. And this
Right.
is providing new material because for years and years and years, major Civil War soldiers, excuse me, major Civil War history
Right.
books had quoted the same excerpts from the same letters.
Exactly.
Now we're getting fresh material that hasn't even been seen
Right.
before. And again, it doesn't particularly change history, but it
Sure.
deepens our appreciation and understanding. I mean, my gosh, can you imagine in the immediate aftermath as a battle is winding down, watching a guy lying in the sand about to drown as the tide's coming in? Okay. These are the things it provides. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I start collecting and buying them online more than I should have. It was my crack cocaine, my heroin addiction.
Right.
And one day one day in 2014, I had bought a letter online, and for some reason I had to pick it up at the post office. They couldn't deliver it to the house. I had to sign or something. So I go to the post office, I pick it up, and I can remember this moment just as clearly as yesterday. I'm driving home, and it suddenly occurs to me, hey, the content of this new letter directly connects to the content of a letter of the thing that happened after it. And at that
Right.
moment, I had this epiphany and the light bulb goes off. Hey, I can assemble intentionally and curate an entire collection that tells the story of the war in real time from beginning
From
to
real
end,
people.
from real people, from their perspective of what it was like to live through it.
Right.
And 500 and well, I think it's 563 is what it's up to now. I'm on a letter buying hiatus for the moment, but it'll come back.
Smart move. Well, let's hear the final letter from New Hampshire.
The final, well, it's not from New Hampshire, but
Ah.
it reflects what New Hampshire, what Granite Staters are feeling and what the whole country was feeling. This is written by a war widow. She'd lost her husband 2 years before, and she's writing in the summer of 1865, and his regiment has just returned home.
Mm-hmm.
And she is writing to his brother, her brother-in-law,
Right.
her late husband's brother, right? And she just sums up the pain that on a wholesale level we can't even imagine people were, right? DeWitt, Iowa, August 8th, 1865. I feel like a wanderer looking for someone that I'll never see again. It feels so foolish to be ever complaining, but I can't help it. How I felt when his regiment returned home without him, I can't describe. I felt then that I had lost him forever on the earth. And this is the line. This sums the Civil War up. Now that the cruel war is over and I look back and I see the many lonely homes, I wonder what it all meant. That she paid the price. She suffered.
Right.
And, it's nice for us to sit back and go, rah, rah, ending slavery, rah, rah, defending states' rights, rah, rah. And you can do 52 other interpretations, right?
Sure.
At the time, the people who lived it and paid the price, what does this really mean? And by the way, they mention that a lot in their letters. Soldiers are writing from all throughout the war on both sides. They're writing home and they're saying, what are people saying about the war at home?
Right.
Now, they're not asking this, but what they're wanting to know is my sacrifice worthwhile?
Worth it.
Is what I'm going through. Do they recognize it? Do they appreciate it? And if I bite the dust, is it going to matter? I would hope to think that here we are remembering them this Monday on Memorial Day, that yes, it does matter.
Right. Well, it's a perfect Memorial Day conversation. The book is a great read for any time. It's got fun. And I don't let the Memorial Day part of the conversation, I throw people off. There's a lot of funny parts and a
There's
lot
moments of humor.
anecdotes. It's just a reminder. You learn it doing talk radio. Everybody's got some great lines in them. You want to give them a chance to unleash them. And this book pulls them together. J. Mark Powell, the book is Witness to War. Where can people find it?
And by the way, just real quick, there's also even a little Vovodio Do.
Not inappropriate. Hey, this is a family-friendly show, pal.
It's a family-friendly book. You can put it on the family bookshelf and in the family library. Don't worry, but it is. It's
I remember the section you're talking about. Actually, it's exactly. One day this book is going to be in school libraries, and that page is going to be worn the same way that the sex scene from The Godfather was worn in our library when I was a kid.
Compared to the stuff they've got on school shelves today, this doesn't even make the list. So it's Witness to War, The Story of Those Who Lived It by J. Mark Powell. It's available Amazon.com. You can get it from Simon & Schuster. You can get it from Books A Million. Heck, you can even order it on Walmart.com. It's everywhere. And if you want to know more about it and read more of a sample, go to jmarkpowell.com, and there's more than you'd ever want to know about it there. And you can order
that's the letter J, J. Mark Powell.
JMarkPowell.com.
Excellent. Well, you passed the spelling portion, so we already won right there. Thanks so much. We appreciate it.
My pleasure, and have a meaningful holiday.